Hi, this is Colby from the Colby Cast.
This is Greg McLaughlin from the Rebel Base Card Podcast.
This is Ross Haldeman of Fantatrax.
Hi, this is Dan Z from Coffee with Kenobi, and you are listening to
Star Wars Reactions.
Star Wars Reactions.
Star Wars Reactions.
Star Wars Reactions.
Elegant discussion.
Elegant discussion.
For a more civilized age.
For a more civilized age. Aaron, you do it better, buddy. I did my best.
There's been an awakening. Have you felt it?
In 1977, George Lucas formed a legacy.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
Inspired by mythology, his saga has become a passion for many.
Feel the Force around you.
His legend has become our story.
It's true.
One of resistance,
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
rebellion,
Rebellion is built on hope.
and redemption.
I am a Jedi, like my father before.
This is Star Wars Reactions.
Remember, the Force will be with you. Always.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another special edition of Star Wars Reactions. Happy May 4th. May the 4th be with you. Happy Star Wars Day. It is the most wonderful time of the year. Yes, and thank you for joining us on Star Wars Day. My name is Aaron Harris. I'm one of your hosts here. And joining me is the Sigmund Freud to my Andy Griffith, the David Motters. David, brother, how you doing?
I am doing really good.
Should have said Sigmund Freud to my Barney Fife. That would have been more appropriate.
Well, they work. It works. You always come up with some good examples there, those contrasts at the beginning, and they're just fun, lighthearted. But no, it's May the 4th. May the 4th be with everybody. And I'll start it with a question. Is it Revenge of the 5th or Revenge of the 6th? I hear people making a little bit of an argument either way. Do we know? I mean, May the 4th be with you, but which one is it? What is it for you?
Well, it's May the 4th be with you.
Okay.
It's Cinco de Mayo. Then after all the tacos, it's definitely Revenge of the 6th.
Boom, 4th, 5th, 6th. That was perfect.
That's how it is in my house.
I didn't even know you were going to say that. I just lobbed the softball up and you hit it out of the park, man.
Yeah, I'm good at that.
Oh my gosh.
As I said in our chat the other day, I have my moments.
You do have your moments.
Like
Han said, right?
Exactly.
Or I guess Leia said, right? You have your moments.
Yes, I do. Yeah. So, all right. Well, definitely welcome to a special edition of Star Wars Reactions. If you listen to our last episode 242, where we talked about chapters 7 and 8 of Maul Shadow Lord, we announced we were going to be doing this special episode because starting in chapter 7 and going very heavily into chapter 8 of the series, we had a major psychological trauma event for Maul that occurred, and it was something that that David and I talked about. We just did not feel could be properly covered in our regular episode. So with May 4th, it gave us the opportunity to present a special episode, a special Psychology Corner episode covering Maul's breakdown.
Wow.
And this is something that I'm really excited to hear. David has put in a lot of work since this episode came out, and I waited. I saw it, knew this is what we needed to do, and waited for him to finally watch the episodes. And as soon as he told me he watched it, I messaged. I said, "This is what we need to do," and he's like, "Yes."
Yeah.
So I can't. I've seen his notes and they're detailed, but I'm going to let David take it from here. David, take us into this special Psychology Corner on Maul.
Absolutely. No, I kind of had an idea where you were going. Aaron and I really do vibe. We are brothers in the Force. So I think through the special Force waves between Lakeland and Ocala, I definitely was vibing with him in the Force about how it would be important to do this. And there, look, Aaron just said it. We covered episode 7 and 8, but we went pretty light on the Maul component, the flashbacks or at chapter 8. Forgive me, and we just knew we could really kind of have a really nice psychology corner, a full psychology corner. I've been doing a lot of mini psychology corners, but Aaron and I were in complete agreement that let's do a complete psychology corner, and Maul's trauma journey here provides the perfect material for a psychology corner. So what I thought I would do, and it's going to be, like Aaron said, kind of heavy with me talking. Just I would ask our listeners, as I talk, just to kind of, listen in. Hopefully you learn something new. If there's a few little nuggets or tidbits that are helpful, that would be wonderful. That's what you always hope. Something I've mentioned on previous episodes is that the men and women who educated me in graduate school always said to us as we were learning, right? We were Padawans, to make your clients good psychologists. So I hope that I'll be able to do at least that a little bit, maybe a lot, maybe a medium amount here, particularly when it comes to trauma, PTSD, and really using Maul's trauma journey to help our listeners become good psychologists. That's been a big part of the psychology corner or mini psychology corners, is to help people become good psychologists. We're going to get over the years here. Hopefully, our listeners have earned their honorary doctorates in psychology. So, what I thought I would do is start off with kind of some history of trauma and some trauma data. All right. So here we go. Some of the earliest looks at trauma on our planet extend all the way back to the mid 1890s. And this started with the work of Pierre Genet, Sigmund Freud, and Joseph Breuer. They did a bunch of different work. Now, I'm not going to go into super detail. I've got extensive amounts of detail that I could convey, but we just don't have time to do that. So just bear with me and show me grace as I kind of convey this information, but not super detailed. Just know the field went dormant after those individuals' work until the aftermath of World War One, and this is when we saw Abram Gardner's formulation of the concept of "quote unquote" traumatic neurosis. There was another kind of dormant period, and then later after World War II, the treatment of what was called shell shock or war trauma or combat neurosis began. And for the first time, what we saw was military psychiatrists working hard at removing the stigma of combat stress reactions. And that work at that time really led to the depathologizing of trauma reactions. That was a big, huge first step on the way to our modern day formulation of PTSD, right? Post traumatic stress disorder. Um, I wanted our listeners to know that the DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. I have mentioned this manual numerous times. It's gone through numerous changes, additions over the years, but PTSD was first added to the DSM 3, which was published in 1980. All right. We're now at the DSM 5 that came out in 2013. I can't believe that's 13 years ago in 2026. But what I wanted to do is before I go over PTSD criteria, okay, and I also want to share with our listeners the Adverse Childhood Event Scale. It's also called the ACE, ACE. I want to read and get into our listeners' minds in order, because I took notes from the Creeping Fear, right, chapter 8, the visions, or like Aaron said, the breakdown of Maul over the course of this episode. Okay, I'm going to give them to you in order. I'm going to read them. And then I just want our listeners to keep these in mind as I go through PTSD criteria and the Adverse Childhood Event Scale and really see how traumatized Maul is. Okay, and we're not just talking a little bit, we're talking a lot. Okay, so in the Creeping Fear, which again we just reviewed in our last episode, chapter 8, The first thing you see is Maul seeing himself as a child. And he says, I hate you, and slaps the water, right? Shortly after that, we see Maul's memory of Sidious coming to take him away. And young Savage Opress, right, is present as well. We're seeing him traumatized. Side note, we see him electrocuted by Count Dooku when he was training Savage Opress. So just a little side note there. So tons of trauma, not just for Maul, but for Savage Opress. So, okay, seeing himself as a child, I hate you, slaps the water. Maul's memory of Sidious coming to take him away with young Savage Opress present. Um, the next thing we see is Maul's memory of being trained, verbally criticized, right? I think Sidious says his strike or his movement is pathetic. And then you see Darth Sidious just electrocute Maul, who looks, I don't know what, 10, 11, 12. It's just a powerful scene and just really difficult to watch. The next one we see, and Aaron alluded to this in our last episode, when we talked a little bit about Maul's trauma journey, was Maul's memory of being cut in half. Um, we then see Maul's memory of being deformed as Spider Maul. All right, we see him there on Lothal Minor. Do people remember that, right? And the Junk Planet. After that, we're presented with Maul's memory of Sidious killing Savage on Mandalore, and even Maul holding Savage's hand. I think we all remember that in season 5 of the Clone Wars. That's the sabers of Sidious, and he just goes backwards so quickly, and just two blades right through Savage. Um, and then the next scene that we see is a quote, and I wrote it down exactly. I had to stop it several times here, but Maul says, "My home, my mother, my brother, all taken from me. Sidious," and now he's yelling, "You did this to me. You did this to me. You did this." Now, something that I added is because Maul says, "My home, my family, my brother." Now, again, family could include his mother, but I mentioned. In last week in our episode 242 that I went back to the Son of Dathomir comic, and you see Maul being held by Rook Cass. I think it might be oh gosh, the other Mandalorian leader there, holding Maul back as he sees his mother killed by Grievous. Sidious and Dooku are there because it was a battle between Maul and his mother, and of course Grievous, Sidious, and Dooku are all there. And so again, going back to his quote, it could be my home, my family, my brother, my mother, all taken from me. So I wanted to mention that to our listeners. And then the last scene that we see, and again, Aaron talked about this a bit last week, is the changing of the voices. But we see a young, um, we see Savage, we see Maul say to young Maul, "I'm sorry. It's all right. It's all right. I won't let him do this to anyone else." And so I just want people to keep all those in mind, right? And it took a little while to get through it, but that's why Aaron and I we didn't feel like we had the time to cover all that in our last episode. So I want to lay that out, all those flashbacks or memories, okay? And now I want to go through PTSD criteria and the adverse childhood event scale. And please, as listeners, keep in mind these experiences, and you'll see how they fit actually perfectly into PTSD criteria and the adverse childhood event scale. All right, so let's start with this. There's 4 types of exposure, okay, that will create post-traumatic stress disorder. So I want to mention that first before going over 4 main symptom clusters. 4 types of exposure. Again, keep in mind what I just read to you from the creeping fear. All right. The first type of exposure, all right, is basically it says to actual or threatened death, serious injury, or sexual violence in one or more of the following ways. Here's the 4 ways. directly experiencing the traumatic events, right? Savage sees his brother taken, Maul is electrocuted, criticized, verbally criticized, and that's just one little snippet, right? So directly experiencing the traumatic events. Number two, witnessing in person the events as it occurs. I just mentioned to you Maul's memory of seeing his brother impaled with two lightsabers on Mandalore, witnessing it in person, right? Directly experiencing the traumatic event, witnessing the event happen to others. Here's number three, learning that the traumatic events occurred to a close family member or close friend. Okay. Number four, experiencing repeated or extreme exposure to aversive details of the traumatic events. People talking about like if you had Rookcast talking about his brother being killed. Of course, we saw him have another brother killed in essence in the Creeping Fear when I think Scorn is killed, right? Right in front of him by the Crow. So when you think about exposure to actual or threatened death or serious injury, tell me that Maul doesn't have that from childhood on, right? Into adulthood. So those are the four types of exposure that are necessary for post-traumatic stress disorder to develop. The next thing I want to read to people, just for their knowledge, okay, to make them good psychologists, is four main symptom clusters, again, from the DSM-5. The first is the presence of one or more of the following intrusion symptoms associated with the traumatic events. So these include things like recurrent, involuntary, and intrusive distressing memories of the traumatic events. That's what we see throughout all of the Creeping Fear. Recurrent and intrusive distressing memories, right? Another way that people can have intrusion symptoms is through recurrent distressing dreams. I have a number of clients dealing with that. Another way is dissociative reactions. And again, this is flashbacks in which the individual feels or acts as if the traumatic event was occurring. We see this happen to Maul throughout this episode, chapter 8. I guess I really call these more chapters than episodes. So, another way of intrusion symptoms are things like marked physiological reactions that people can have when they're triggered. All right, so that's one big symptom cluster. Here's another one. Here's the second one. Persistent avoidance of stimuli associated with the traumatic events, beginning after the traumatic event or events occurred. So, for example, people avoid distressing memories, thoughts, or feelings, okay, associated with the event. People avoid external reminders, people, places, conversations, activities, objects, situations that arouse those distressing memories or thoughts, okay? So again, persistent avoidance of stimuli that's associated with the traumatic event. A third symptom cluster that we see in PTSD is negative alterations in thoughts and mood associated with the traumatic events. And they begin or worsen after the traumatic event occurred. Some examples of like alterations in cognitions or mood include the inability to remember an important aspect of the traumatic event. We kind of call that dissociative amnesia. Um, Another alteration in cognition involves persistent and exaggerated negative beliefs or expectations about oneself, right? I am bad. No one can be trusted. Go back to the flashback, the first one where we see Maul looking at himself as a child and says, I hate you, right? This, I think the writers might have had the DSM there with them, Aaron, as they're writing the scripts, which is good. All right. So another real quick one under this symptom cluster are things like persistent distorted cognitions about the cause or consequences of the traumatic events. And that a lot of times can lead the individual to blame themselves or others. Okay. And there's more details under there, but let me go to the fourth symptom cluster so people know what all four are. And this is marked alterations in arousal and reactivity associated with the traumatic events. And again, they begin or worsen after the traumatic event or events have occurred. And examples of this, and again, I've got a number of clients dealing with this, irritable behavior and angry outbursts, okay? That, you haven't typically seen in the person before. Reckless or self-destructive behavior, hypervigilant, exaggerated startle response. I've got a few clients right now here where I work who have been in car accidents, either their fault or someone else has hit them. And they have really exaggerated startle responses. And it's very difficult for them to be in cars right now because it starts to trigger that panic, that trauma. We also see sleep disturbances and problems with concentration with this symptom cluster. Okay. So I wanted people to hear that not only 4 types of exposure that bring about post traumatic stress disorder, but 4 different symptom clusters that we see develop and make up post traumatic stress disorder. I don't want anybody to have any of these 4 symptom clusters. Now, something I thought about when Aaron had said to me, Dave, let's definitely do a big psychology corner here because we've been doing these mini ones. Is I immediately thought about a measure that we do give our clients who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. I do have a few clients in their 90s, both men and women. And we give this to all of them. And I want people to hear this and know this. It's called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Scale. We also call it the ACE. It has been researched extensively, extensively. I wanted to read the 10 items. I meet with our physicians and providers every Wednesday afternoon, and I go over a lot of data and I go over this. And a lot of times when I see that someone has endorsed, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these, it just makes me um, sad because of the effect that these can have on people long term. I, of course, want people to have a 0 out of 10 on this scale. So let me read these. And again, think about Maul and his different flashbacks or memories in Chapter 8, The Creeping Fear. So here's the 10 items on the ACE. Number 1. And again, this question prefaces this on, did you experience this prior to your 18th birthday? And again, when we see Maul and even Savage, they both look under 18. They look like what? 10, 11, 12, maybe Savage is 14 or something. I don't know. They both are young. Here's number 1. Did you feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, or had no one to protect or take care of you? And it's simply yes or no. Number 2, did you lose a parent through divorce, abandonment, death, or another reason? Right? We see Maul loses his mother, right? Mother tells him, not through divorce or abandonment or death, but for another reason. Sidious is basically doing this, right? He's mother tells him what he's doing. I think she's trying to, I don't know, trying to make the best out of a horrific situation. Number 3, did you live with anyone who was depressed, mentally ill, or attempted suicide? do we think Sidious, Darth Sidious is mentally ill? I want to be the galactic ruler of the world. You're talking about an absolute sociopath, right? Number 4, did you live with anyone who had a problem with drinking or using drugs, including prescription drugs? Okay, there's another question. Number 5, did your parents or adults in your home ever hit, punch, beat, or threaten to harm each other? So this is kind of seeing them do this towards each other. You think about how Sidious is to any of his apprentices, whether it's Dooku or Maul or anybody. I mean, there's, just abuse towards each other. Number 6, did you live with anyone who went to jail or prison? We see Maul go to prison in Son of Dathomir. Number 7, did a parent or adult in your home ever swear at you, insult you, or put you down? We immediately saw that in the flashback where Sidious is criticizing his lightsaber strike is pathetic. Who knows all the other things he said, but a lot of put downs, and then just blasts him with electricity. Number 8, let's see, did a parent or adult in your home ever hit, beat, kick, or physically hurt you in any way? Right. The previous one was swear at you, insult you, or put you down. Right. So verbal abuse. Number 8 is about physical abuse. And again, we see that, right, with Maul. Number 9, did you feel that no one in your family loved you or thought you were special? Right. That's the whole message from Sidious to Maul, and then discards him, right? After he's cut in half, thinks he's dead. Sidious doesn't go looking for him, right? And then number 10, did you experience unwanted sexual contact, right, at that time? Yes or no? There is an 11th question here that says, do you believe these experiences have affected your health? And you can answer not much, some, or a lot. Now, something I wanted to mention to our listeners is to not only think about this scale and those questions and how a number of them apply to Maul, but let me read you some stuff that we convey to our providers, our physicians, our nurse practitioners, and physicians assistants. Here's 3 pieces of data in terms of outcome from the ACE. Again, this is nothing. This is extensive research here, and I want our listeners to know that this isn't just 1 or 2 studies. No, this is extensive research.
Yeah.
Here's 3 big outcomes. Here's the first one: a score of 4 or higher. Right? If people say 4, not 10, but 4 or higher, has been shown in multiple studies to increase the risk of lung disease, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune disorders, hepatitis, as well as depression, being a victim of violence, and increased risk of suicide. That's a score of 4 or higher. Number 2, if we see people who have a score of 6 or higher, some of these individuals, Aaron, live 20 years or less. So if you were going to make it to 80, some of these people die at 60. If you were going to make it to 65, some of these people die at 45, 50. Okay. So a score of 6 or higher out of those 10. And I also want to mention this on some of the research that I was looking at in a journal that I get, which is called Clinical Psychology, Science and Practice. I remember this really sticking out to me, and I've dealt with this, is that when people have these higher scores on the ACE, they don't respond to medications, antidepressants as well, right? Like sertraline or venlafaxine or any of the SSRIs that we have, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. These individuals just don't, their depression and anxiety don't respond as well. And these individuals with higher scores, they do not make as much headway in therapy. I've had this where I'm working with someone and sometimes I just feel like I'm hitting my head against the wall. And it's not, I'm not blaming that person or myself. It's just, we call it the sequelae, right? The unfortunate outcomes of having these types of adverse childhood experiences. And so putting all of this together, okay, I would just ask our listeners to really think about and see why we have uh, a Maul that we're seeing. I think we do have a few more layers added on to him. We did know that he was taken from his mother, from right, son of Dathomir. I think it was also in the Darth Plagueis novel. I heard some people talking about that it might have been mentioned in there. But from the start of his life until, of course, what we see at the end of Rebels is just someone who is just been traumatized and then unfortunately traumatizes others. You know, what's that saying, Aaron? Hurt people hurt people. And so, yeah. So, the other thing I wanted to mention just before we just kind of wrap up here is it's very interesting to me that Sam Witwer, he does the voice of Maul. He does Sidious, his laugh and some of the background laughing by Sidious and some of his comments. And we also know from the credits that Sam does young Savage Opress. So he's doing the abuser and the abused. So again, here's Sam Witwer doing an incredible job presenting this from 2 different points of view. So again, I hope our listeners got something out of that, learned something, maybe a few little nuggets, and gives them another way to look at this particular episode, right? We could look at it at a more surface level, but you and I wanted to cover this at a psychology corner level. So there you go.
Very good. Very good. I loved it.
Mm,
It was such a, there's such in depth in your psychology corners, which is why I wanted to do it this way. It just wouldn't have done it justice to try to squeeze something into our last episode. So bravo. And you should see his notes, folks. They are
mm.
extremely detailed. he, he puts a lot of thought into these. So uh bravo. And of course we would love to hear from you. Of course, if you want to reach out and ask questions about the Psychology Corner or share your thoughts on Maul, you can always do that by hitting up any of our Carabas show socials. Made it through. Can't make it through one episode, you know. Of course, we have our Facebook and X at SW Reactions Pod. Then, of course, everywhere else, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Blue Sky, Tumblr, Pinterest, all at SW Reactions. Email us, swreactions@gmail.com. Or, of course, you can send us a voicemail at speakpipe.com/Star Wars Reactions. And David, if somebody wants to ask you some more questions about the Psychology Corner or just talk Star Wars with you, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, I think, two ways. We could do Instagram. That's just at David Motters. And of course, I've been saying this lately. Hit me up on any of the show socials. And like I've mentioned before, Aaron always bops those over to me.
Absolutely, sure do. And of course, you want to talk to me, any of the show socials works. Or of course, you can hit me up on my personal Instagram at TA Harris 121079 or X with the same handle. So there we go. Now, of course, David, we had such a great psychology corner and it was so in depth and there's so much intense emotion and seriousness in what was discussed. I feel we should end the episode on a light note.
I like that. We definitely have to lighten it up a little bit, just to because it's May the 4th. We've got
Absolutely.
to be happy about that. Yes.
Absolutely. So I got a special May 4th Star Wars dad joke of the week just for us today. Just to clarify what I just said, the joke is not May 4th related. It is just we're doing a special one on May 4th. Carabast. So let's. You ready, David?
I'm ready, man. Let's do this.
There we go. Why did Maul throw stakes at Obi-Wan?
Why did Maul throw stakes at Obi-Wan?
So he could meet his destiny.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Wow.
So he could meet his destiny.
Wow.
Whether it's a sirloin or a fillet, he met the destiny.
Oh, jeez.
Kingfish ribeye. You don't know the power.
Oh my gosh.
You don't
That
know
was
the-
perfect. That was perfect to end this one on a
Absolutely.
lighter note. On a lighter note.
Absolutely. You don't know the power of my New York strip.
Oh my God.
All right, I better stop while I'm ahead. Anywho. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We hope you had a wonderful Star Wars day. Hope you have a wonderful day, wonderful week. If of course, with it being May 4th, the finale of Maul Shadow Lord is available now, so watch it. Get your thoughts. Send us your thoughts in on the episode to any of our socials. We will be back later this week with our review of the finale and wrap up a tremendous series here on Maul Shadow Lord. But in the meantime, be safe. We love you. We're praying for you, wishing you all the best. And remember, just do something kind for somebody. Make the world just a little better by a kind word or a kind action. So remember, this is your place for elegant Carabast.
Was that 2 or 3 are we at now?
It's 3.
Okay, 3. Okay.
We made it, for the record, this is a double header for us. We recorded 242, which is our review of 7 and 8. Then we went right into the psychology corner. This is why I don't do double headers.
Well, true.
Because I made it through 242 with no errors. And I am crashing like I'm crashing. I am crashing like one of those gunships.
That's right.
All right, let's try this again. Remember, this is your place for elegant discussion for a more civilized age.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or by Lucasfilm Limited. It's intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars. All names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Disney and the respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Star Wars Reactions unless otherwise indicated. Star Wars Reactions. Elegant discussion for a more civilized age.